Hello everyone. Before we start, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is for you. That's how YouTube keeps sending you stories like this. And now, let's get into it. The first few times I drove through Shasta, I felt watched. The forests pressed close to the road. The light stayed dim even at noon. It made my shoulders tighten. Months later, I passed through again and felt calm instead. The trees looked orderly. The air felt clean. I understood why people stayed. The deep north grew on me. I learned which places felt heavy and which places felt honest. Eastern California never did that for me. It never softened. The land flattened and stretched until distance lost meaning. The colors faded into dust and glare. I told myself it was only geography. I had driven rural roads my whole life. My family owned property in Palmdale. Empty space did not scare me. Silence did not scare me. Long drives from Sacramento to Southern California usually relaxed me. I planned fuel stops. I listened to the same playlists. I knew the grades and the winds. This trip felt wrong before it started. I left home early. The sky was pale and hard. The air already felt dry. I noticed my jaw was clenched as I merged onto the highway. I kept checking mirrors without reason. My stomach felt tight. Nothing had happened yet. The car ran fine. Traffic stayed light. Still, I felt late even though I was not. The road pulled straight and flat. The sense of distance grew instead of shrinking. The horizon stayed far no matter how long I drove. As the miles passed, the landscape stripped itself down. Trees thinned into shrubs. Shrubs broke into bare dirt. Wind farms appeared, then vanished. The sun rose higher and turned the windshield into a sheet of white. The heat climbed fast. The air inside the car felt stale no matter how I adjusted the vents. My head started to ache behind the eyes. I drank water and felt no relief. The road signs counted down towns that did not look real when I reached them. Everything looked temporary. Nothing felt lived in. I crossed into Barstow with no clear marker that mattered. The place announced itself through texture rather than signs. The pavement looked worn in uneven patches. Buildings sat farther back from the road than made sense. Parking lots spread wider than the stores they served. Light poles stood taller than needed and cast thin shadows that offered no shade. The wind blew grit across the asphalt in short bursts. It stung the skin through an open window. The feeling hit me hard and fast. Irritation turned into anger without an object. My thoughts raced and looped. I wanted to leave before I had even parked. I told myself to finish the trip. I needed the hotel. I needed sleep. I needed to be done. The hotel sat near the freeway. A low building. Beige walls. Dark windows. The parking lot held more empty spaces than cars. The air smelled like hot rubber and dust. The sun pressed down with no mercy. I felt exposed walking from the car. My skin prickled as if I had stepped into a spotlight. Inside, the air cooled but did not refresh. The lobby lighting felt harsh. The carpet held stains that had faded into the pattern. The walls carried scuffs at shoulder height. I checked in without thinking about it and took the key to my room. The hallway stretched longer than expected. The silence felt thick. The air smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals layered over something old. The room looked clean at first glance. White sheets. Neutral walls. A desk with a lamp. A window facing the lot. When I closed the door, the quiet felt heavy. The air unit rattled and blew cold that smelled damp. My headache sharpened. My mood sank lower. I set my bag down and stood still, trying to calm myself. My hands shook. I felt irritated by the hum of the unit. I felt irritated by the light. I felt irritated by my own breathing. I tried to rest. My body refused. My mind kept scanning. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. The texture looked uneven. The light flickered slightly. The sound from the freeway crept through the walls as a steady hiss. Every few minutes a truck roared past and the room vibrated. Each vibration made my chest jump. I felt trapped. I felt foolish for feeling trapped. I stood and paced. The carpet felt gritty under bare feet. The air felt wrong in my lungs. I opened the window an inch. Hot air rushed in, carrying the smell of exhaust and dust. I closed it again. The room felt smaller. The walls felt closer. Anger flared again with no target. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to drive. I wanted distance. I checked the time and realized I had barely been there an hour. My heart raced as if I had run. I splashed water on my face. My skin looked flushed. My eyes looked glassy. I drank more water. My mouth stayed dry. I felt lightheaded when I stood up. I sat on the bed and put my head in my hands. The explanation came slowly and without drama. The room air unit cycled on and off. Each time it kicked on, the damp smell thickened. My head pounded harder. I remembered reports about poorly maintained units in desert hotels. Mold thrives where heat meets condensation. Old filters trap dust and spores. Breathing that air can trigger headaches, nausea, irritability. Dehydration amplifies everything. Desert glare exhausts the nervous system. Long drives strain the body even when the mind thinks it is fine. Barstow was not haunted. It was hostile to human comfort in small, cumulative ways. The scale of the place worked against rest. The light never softened. The wind never stopped. The town existed as a corridor, not a destination. Everything served movement and nothing served staying. The hotels were built to turn people over quickly. Sleep was an afterthought. The land did not invite lingering. Understanding this did not fix how I felt. It gave the feeling a shape. That helped. I packed my bag. I opened the door and felt relief just from stepping into the hallway. The air there felt marginally better. I walked fast to the car. The sun was lower but still harsh. The heat radiated from the pavement. I got in and closed the door and sat for a moment with the engine off, breathing. I left Barstow before dark. As the town fell behind me, my shoulders dropped. The headache eased. The anger faded into fatigue. The road stretched out again, but now it led away. The lights thinned. The air cooled. My thoughts slowed. By the time I reached the edge of the desert, the unease had drained away. I drove through the night toward places that felt anchored. Toward trees and hills and towns built to hold people, not just pass them through. When I finally stopped, I slept deeply. The memory of Barstow stayed sharp, not as a mystery but as a lesson. Some places are not evil. They are simply unforgiving. The body knows before the mind does. I was in my mid-20s, old enough to trust my instincts, but still young enough to believe I could outrun trouble if it showed up. I was driving a small Toyota pickup from Las Vegas back to Los Angeles, a trip I had done before without thinking much about it. This was the early 1980s. Before that stretch of road filled in with warehouses, outlets, and endless lights. Back then, the highway between Vegas and Barstow felt unfinished, like someone had carved a road through a place that did not want it. I left Vegas later than planned. Midnight came up fast. The city glow fell behind me and the desert swallowed everything. The road stretched straight and flat, dark on both sides, broken only by reflectors and the faint shine of distant hills. The radio faded in and out, mostly static. I shut it off. The engine noise and the tires on asphalt were enough company. The air felt different out there at night. Cooler, heavier, with a dry smell that never really goes away in the Mojave. I cracked the window to stay awake. The wind carried dust and something sharp. Maybe creosote, maybe oil from the road. There were long gaps between other cars. When headlights did appear, they passed quick and disappeared into nothing. As I neared Barstow, the road stayed quiet. I expected more traffic, more signs, more lights. Instead, there was almost nothing. Just black sky and a pale strip of highway cutting through it. I kept my speed steady and stayed alert. Fatigue had not set in yet, but the stillness had a way of dulling the senses. That was when I noticed headlights in my mirror. At first they were far back, a soft glow bouncing slightly with the road. I assumed another late-night driver, maybe a truck trying to make time. I kept my lane and watched them close the distance faster than expected. Within seconds they were right behind me, so close that I could not see the front of the vehicle, only the lights filling my mirrors. The truck rode my bumper without wavering. No drifting, no hesitation, just steady pressure. I eased off the gas to let them pass. The highway had 4 lanes. There was plenty of room. Instead of moving left, the truck stayed where it was. Then the lights changed. 2 new beams snapped on, brighter than anything I had seen on a road vehicle. They blasted straight forward, white and harsh, flooding my mirrors and the cab of my truck. It felt like someone had turned the sun on behind me. The glass lit up. My eyes burned. I tilted the mirror down, but the glare bounced off everything. The effect was instant and disorienting. I lost all sense of what was behind me. The road ahead stayed visible, but my focus narrowed. I felt exposed, pinned in place by light. My first thought was that it had to be a prank or some kind of modified off-road setup. People did strange things to trucks back then. Still, the placement was deliberate. Those lights were aimed straight at me. I sped up. The Toyota strained as I pushed it faster than I liked on that empty stretch. The truck behind me stayed locked in. The distance did not change. The lights did not dim. They stayed steady, unwavering, like the driver had no intention of letting up. My heart rate climbed. I told myself to stay calm, to think through it. I signaled and moved 1 lane over, giving them space. They matched the move. I slowed again, hoping they would go around. They slowed too, staying right behind me. The desert pressed in. There were no exits in sight. No lights, no buildings, just road and dark and that unbearable glare. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they wanted me to speed up. Maybe they thought I was going too slow. Maybe they were drunk. None of those explanations fit the control in their driving. I took an exit when it finally appeared, a simple off-ramp leading to a crossroad that vanished into darkness. I slowed hard and took it, tires humming as I left the highway. The truck behind me stayed on the road and continued straight. The lights shrank and disappeared. I pulled over at the bottom of the ramp and shut off the engine. The silence hit me all at once. My hands shook as I rested them on the wheel. The desert felt closer off the highway, like it was leaning in. I waited. No other cars came. No lights moved. I sat there longer than necessary, breathing slowly, telling myself it was over. When I finally pulled back onto the road, I merged carefully and watched my mirrors. A few minutes passed. The highway stayed empty. My shoulders relaxed just enough to feel the tension I had been holding. Then I saw the truck again. It was parked on the shoulder ahead, dark and still, no lights on, just a shape against the night. As I approached, the headlights snapped on. Then the same blinding lights flared, this time facing backward, aimed straight into my windshield. The glare swallowed everything. I could not see the road. I could not see the truck's outline. I felt like I was driving into a wall of white. I slowed instinctively. The truck moved forward at the same pace, maintaining the distance, keeping the lights locked on me. I tried to speed up and pass on the left. The truck drifted into my lane and blocked me without any sudden movement. It was smooth and intentional. I slowed again. They slowed. The realization settled in that this was not random. This was controlled. Someone was playing with my position on the road, dictating my speed, my options, my vision. Fear sharpened into something colder. I thought about how empty the highway was. I thought about how long it would take for help to arrive, if something went wrong. I thought about the fact that nobody would see this from a distance. Just 2 vehicles swallowed by desert. I pulled onto the shoulder and stopped. My engine idled. My headlights stayed on. The truck ahead pulled over too, stopping about 1/10 of a mile in front of me. The lights stayed on, flooding the road between us. I waited. My mouth felt dry. Sweat cooled on my neck. After a minute, the truck moved forward and merged back into the lane. I stayed put. When the distance grew, I pulled back onto the highway. It happened again. The same routine. Blocking, blinding, matching speed. Every move mirrored. Time stretched. Each mile felt heavier than the last. I started thinking less about escape and more about endurance. How long could this go on? How far would they take it? I looked at my dashboard clock. It felt like hours had passed, but it had been less than 20 minutes. The desert has a way of distorting time when nothing changes. I knew I could not keep playing their game. Slowing down made me vulnerable. Speeding up trapped me in the glare. Stopping only reset the pattern. I made a decision that felt reckless but necessary. I waited for a stretch where the road was straight and clear. I shut off my headlights and floored the truck. Darkness swallowed me instantly. The road vanished except for faint reflectors and the memory of where the lanes ran. My eyes strained. My grip tightened. The engine roared as I pushed it past comfort. The truck behind me reacted a second too late. The glare vanished. I surged forward into open dark. I stayed in the passing lane and did not look back. I focused on the reflectors, on keeping the line, on staying upright. The speed was dangerous. Any mistake would have ended me out there. I held it until my hands went numb, and my jaw ached from clenching. When I finally risked a glance in the mirror, there were no lights behind me. I did not slow until I saw an exit sign ahead with a faint glow beneath it. A gas station still open, a lone island of light in the desert. I took the ramp too fast and bounced as I hit the side road. The station came into full view, bright and ordinary, like a promise. I pulled in hard and parked under the lights. My legs felt weak when I stepped out. The smell of fuel and hot asphalt grounded me. The night felt less threatening with walls and glass around. Inside, I used the phone to contact the highway patrol. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, tight and clipped. I explained what happened, where I was, what I saw. They took the report and said they would keep an eye out. There was no sense of urgency in their tone, no surprise. I stayed there until the sky began to lighten. More cars passed. Normal traffic returned. The desert lost some of its edge as shapes became clearer and the world filled back in. When I got back on the highway, the road looked harmless. Just pavement and signs and distant hills. The pickup was gone. There was no trace of it, no evidence of what had happened beyond my own memory, and the tension still lodged in my body. I drove on to Los Angeles without stopping again. The sun rose behind me, washing the desert in pale gold. By the time I reached the city, the night felt unreal, like something that belonged to a different version of the road. I never drove that section at night again. Not because I believed something waited out there, but because I learned how easy it was for a single vehicle, a single person, to turn an empty highway into a trap. The desert did not need ghosts or stories to be dangerous. It only needed space, darkness, and someone willing to use both. I drove through Aberdeen, Washington, a month ago without any plan to stop. It was a gap between places on a longer drive, a name on a map that usually passed by without thought. I had driven through plenty of towns like it before. Logging towns, mill towns, places that once mattered more than they do now. I expected quiet streets, a few closed storefronts, maybe a diner trying to hang on. I did not expect what I saw as soon as I crossed into town. The light was gray even though it was late morning. Not rain, not fog. Just a heavy flat sky that pressed down on everything. The buildings looked tired in a way that felt permanent, not neglected but worn through years of use and disappointment. As I slowed for the first traffic light, I saw a man waiting at the crosswalk. His face was covered in cuts. Not fresh gashes, but layered injuries in different stages of healing. Dark red lines crossed his cheeks and forehead. Blood had dried along his jaw and neck, and then re-wet itself in places, leaving thin trails that caught the light. His eyes were calm. Not vacant, not panicked. He was not signaling for help or looking at anyone. A cigarette hung from his mouth while he searched his jacket pocket with slow patience. He was looking for a lighter. His hands shook just enough to notice. The light changed. I drove on. In my rearview mirror, he was still standing there, cigarette still unlit, still searching. A few blocks later, the road narrowed and the sidewalks felt closer to the car. A man stumbled along the edge of the street. He wore tattered jeans and a blanket, wrapped over his shoulders like a coat. His shoes dragged instead of lifted. His head tilted forward as if his neck could not hold it upright anymore. His eyes were open but fixed on nothing. The stare went straight through the world in front of him. He moved with purpose but without direction, crossing side streets without looking, drifting back toward the curb as if pulled by gravity. I slowed instinctively, not because he was in the road, but because something in me wanted distance, more time to see him clearly. As I passed, his eyes shifted. They landed on my windshield for half a second. There was no recognition in them, no curiosity, just wait. I kept driving. 2 blocks later, I saw 2 men standing close together on the sidewalk near a boarded storefront. Their bodies were angled toward each other, shoulders tense, arms rigid at their sides. Their mouths were open mid-sentence, faces tight with strain. Whatever they were saying, it carried force. When my car rolled past them, both stopped at the same time. Their heads turned together, their eyes locked onto me. The look was not surprise, it was not interest. It was contempt. It felt practiced, sharpened by repetition. I was not a threat to them. I was not even a person in that moment. I was an intrusion, a reminder of something they did not have, and did not want to be reminded of. Their gaze followed my car until I turned the corner. I felt my shoulders rise toward my ears. I let them drop. I told myself this was coincidence. A bad block, a bad morning. I had lived across from an encampment in Minneapolis. I knew what poverty looked like up close. I had shared sidewalks, conversations, silence. I had seen violence, aftermath, and mental illness and desperation. I had never framed those places as dark or threatening. They were human spaces, complicated but familiar. This felt different. I drove a few more blocks before deciding not to stop for lunch. The plan no longer made sense. The idea of sitting still inside this town felt wrong in a way I could not explain. I needed to reroute. I pulled over near a closed gas station to check my map. The engine idled. The sound felt loud. I leaned toward the passenger seat and unlocked my phone. The screen glowed against the dim interior. I pinched the map, looking for an alternative highway, something that would carry me through without forcing me deeper into town. I felt it before I saw it. The pressure of being watched settled on my skin, starting at the back of my neck and moving forward. I looked up. A man stood a few feet from my driver's side window. I had not heard him approach. He was close enough that I could see the cracked lines in his lips, the dirt under his fingernails, the way his chest rose too fast for someone standing still. His eyes were fixed on me, not my car me. His face was tight with anger, not explosive anger, not frantic rage. It was contained, dense, focused. His jaw was set, his brow pulled down and inward. There was no question in his stare, no curiosity. He was not asking for anything. He was not lost. He was not confused about why I was there. He knew exactly why he was standing where he was. I locked the phone screen without thinking. My hand moved on its own. I did not reach for the window or gesture or smile. I did not acknowledge him. I started the car fully, shifted into gear, and pulled back onto the road. In the mirror, he did not move. He did not step back or follow. He stayed where he was, still staring, as if he had expected me to leave. I drove until the town thinned out and the buildings gave way to trees and open space. The air felt lighter almost immediately. My breathing slowed. The tension drained from my hands one finger at a time. I replayed what I had seen, trying to categorize it. None of it was extreme on its own. I had seen worse. I had lived near worse. There were no weapons, no threats, no direct danger. Yet the feeling stayed with me, heavy and precise. What unsettled me was not the poverty or the injuries or the anger. It was the consistency. Every person I saw carried the same weight. Not despair alone. Not addiction alone. It was something quieter and more corrosive. A sense of being abandoned by time itself. As if the town had slipped out of the present, and no one had noticed or cared enough to pull it back. Aberdeen did not feel forgotten. Forgotten places fade. This place felt trapped. Stuck between what it used to be and what it had become. with no exit in either direction. The people reflected that stasis. They were not moving toward anything. They were enduring. I thought about the man at the crosswalk, patiently searching for a lighter with blood drying on his skin. About the man wrapped in a blanket, walking without destination. About the shared contempt from the two men who stopped talking just to look at me. About the final stare, close enough to feel personal, charged without any obvious trigger. I realized none of them had asked for help, not once. There were no signs, no gestures, no pleas. There was no performance of suffering. They existed inside it without comment. That was the part I could not shake. When I reached the highway and the town disappeared behind me, I did not feel relief. I felt clarity. I understood that some places are not dangerous because of what might happen there, but because of what has already happened and never stopped happening. Places where pain has settled into the ground and soaked into daily life until it becomes normal. I have driven through many small towns since then. Quiet ones, struggling ones, forgotten ones. None have carried the same presence. None have left me checking my mirrors long after I left. Aberdeen stayed with me because it showed me something I did not want to see. That a place can be alive and still feel dead. That people can be present and still unreachable. That darkness does not always come from threat or violence. Sometimes it comes from endurance without hope. I did not stop there. I did not turn back. I did not tell anyone I was afraid. I simply kept driving, knowing I would remember that town long after the road erased it from view. By the third day of living out of my car, the road had already started to blur together in my head. I had left a bad situation behind, and did not yet know where I was going. I only knew I needed distance. Distance from people who knew my name. Distance from routines. Distance from anything that could pin me down. I had a few $100s, a sleeping bag, clothes stuffed into duffel bags, and a car that ran well enough if I treated it gently. That felt like enough at the time. The Midwest was not a place I chose so much as a place I drifted into. Long straight highways cut through flat land, broken by trees, fields, and towns that looked half asleep even in daylight. I think I was in Ohio, but I cannot say that with certainty. The signs all started to look the same after a while. I measured my days by gas stops and rest areas. I slept in my car when I could find a quiet place and stayed moving when I could not. That morning had started early. I had slept poorly, wedged into the driver's seat with my jacket rolled behind my neck. Trucks came and went all night. Air brakes hissed. Engines idled. Every sound felt close. When the sky lightened, I gave up on sleep, started the car, and drove. I told myself I would find a place to sit for a while, drink coffee, and feel human again. The rest area came up mid-morning. Trees lined the entrance road tall and thin, their leaves making a soft constant sound in the wind. The parking lot was wide and mostly empty. A few semis idled along the far edge. A couple of cars sat scattered near the building. I pulled into a spot near the vending machines and turned off the engine. The silence after driving always felt heavy, like my ears needed time to adjust. I stayed in the car longer than I meant to. I rearranged things that did not need rearranging. I checked my phone even though there were no messages. I wiped the inside of the windshield with an old shirt. Anything to delay stepping out and being visible. When I finally opened the door, the air smelled like hot pavement and grass. Bugs clicked and buzzed in the trees. 2 spaces down, a dark sedan sat with its hood open. 2 men stood in front of it, leaning in close, their heads almost touching as they stared into the engine bay. They were both heavyset, wearing stained jeans and sleeveless shirts. Their arms were thick, their skin rough and red, like they spent most of their time outside. One had greasy hair pulled back into a short tail. The other wore a ball cap with a bent brim. Oil darkened their hands. I noticed them the way you notice any strangers when you have been alone too long. I did not think much of it at first. Cars break down. People stop. That is what rest areas are for. I closed my door and locked it without thinking, then walked toward the building with my head down. Inside, the restrooms smelled sharp and clean, the kind of smell meant to cover other smells. The vending machines hummed. I fed crumpled bills into one and watched a paper cup drop and slide into place. The coffee came out thin and too hot. I did not care. I needed warmth and something bitter in my mouth to tell my body it was awake. On my way back out, I slowed without meaning to. The two men were still by their car. A third man stood with them now, closer to the edge of the parking lot. He was taller, thinner, his posture stiff. He looked toward me as I walked past, not directly at my face, but at my body, my car keys, the way I moved. His eyes lingered longer than felt normal. As I passed, I heard low voices. Not words I could make out, just tone. It was flat, rough, edged with something that made the hair on my arms lift. It could have been nothing. Men talking about an engine. Men annoyed at being stuck. But my chest tightened. Years of moving through the world had taught me to listen to that feeling, even when my mind tried to argue it away. I kept walking, my steps even, my gaze forward. I did not look back. I told myself I was being paranoid. Living on the road had already sharpened my nerves. Every stranger felt closer. Every sound felt louder. Still, I did not like the way the voices dropped as I passed, then rose again once I was a few steps farther away. I reached my car and unlocked it. As I opened the door, I glanced toward the restrooms. The tall man was walking out, drying his hands on his jeans. He looked in my direction. Our eyes met for a second. There was no expression there, just a blank look, like he was measuring distance. That was enough. I got into the car, closed the door, and started the engine in one smooth motion. I did not sit. I did not finish my coffee. I pulled out of the space and headed for the exit road, my heart beating faster than made sense. In the mirror, I saw the tall man turn back toward the other two. He said something. One of them straightened up and looked after me. I did not wait to see more. The road out of the rest area curved gently before joining the highway. Trees closed in on both sides, their shadows striping the pavement. I told myself once I was back on the highway, it would be fine. Traffic meant safety. Speed meant distance. I merged and settled into the right lane. My hands were tight on the wheel. I forced my shoulders to relax. The coffee cup rattled in the holder. I took a sip and burned my tongue, but the pain grounded me. A minute passed, then another. My breathing slowed. I told myself again that I was imagining things, that they had no reason to care about me, that I was just another car passing through. I checked the mirror. The dark sedan was behind me. At first, it was far back, a shape among other shapes. Then it grew larger. It moved into my lane. It closed the gap fast. The front end filled my mirror. Headlights bright even in daylight. They were riding so close I could not see the grille clearly. My speedometer crept up. 70, 75, 80. The car stayed glued to me. No attempt to pass. No backing off. Just pressure, constant and deliberate. My mouth went dry. I felt that cold spreading sensation in my stomach, the one that comes when your body knows something before your mind can put words to it. I scanned the road ahead. Traffic was light. A few cars scattered in the distance. Fields rolled past on either side. I eased off the gas, hoping they would pass. The distance between us vanished. I could see the driver's silhouette now, shoulders hunched forward. The passenger seat was occupied too. I could not see faces, only movement. I sped up again. The needle climbed. The car stayed with me, steady, relentless. When noise rose, the road hummed under my tires. An exit sign appeared ahead, a simple green sign pointing to a county road. No town name I recognized, just a number. My thoughts raced. If I stayed on the highway, they could follow me for miles. If I slowed or stopped, I would be trapped. I needed a way to break contact. As I approached the exit, a plan formed. Simple and desperate. I waited until the last moment, then cut across lanes and took the ramp hard. The tires squealed. The car lurched. My body pressed against the seatbelt. In the mirror, the sedan followed without hesitation. They took the ramp just as fast, their tires smoking briefly as they corrected. The exit ramp ended at a rural road that stretched straight into open land. Cornfields on one side, a line of trees on the other. Just beyond the end of the ramp, on the right, sat a small gas station and convenience store, one pump island, a low building with sun-faded signs. A few cars were parked near the door. Time seemed to stretch. I saw the station. I saw the road ahead. I felt the weight of the car behind me. I made a decision without thinking it through fully. I drove past the entrance, just far enough that it looked like I was continuing on the rural road. Then I jerked the wheel hard to the right and hit the brakes at the same time. The car fishtailed. Gravel sprayed. The world tilted. I fought the wheel, my heart hammering in my ears. I slid into the station lot sideways, then straightened and slammed the gas. The engine roared. The sedan did not turn. It blew past the entrance, staying on the rural road, still at speed. For a second, everything felt unreal. Like I had imagined the whole thing. Like they would slow, turn around, come back. They did not. I did not wait to see what they would do next. I swung the car around in a tight arc, tires skidding again, and shot back toward the on-ramp. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the wheel harder to keep control. I did not stop at the station. I did not look at the people standing near the door. I only cared about getting back to the highway. I took the ramp even faster this time. I merged without signaling, cutting in front of a truck. The driver honked. I did not care. I floored it and stayed in the right lane until the speedometer climbed past 80 again. Only after several miles did I begin to slow. I checked the mirror over and over. No dark sedan, no headlights gaining on me. Just open road and distant traffic. My chest ached. My jaw hurt from clenching. When I finally pulled into another rest area much later, I parked far from everyone else and sat with the engine running, staring straight ahead. I replayed the sequence in my mind again and again, searching for another explanation. Maybe they thought I had cut them off. Maybe they were just aggressive drivers. Maybe the timing was a coincidence. But the memory of their faces, the way they watched me, the way the car stayed glued to me without trying to pass, would not soften into something harmless. I knew what it felt like to be followed with intent. I had felt it before in cities, on streets at night. This was the same feeling, stretched out on open road with nowhere to hide. Eventually, my breathing slowed. The shaking eased. I turned the engine off and sat in the quiet. The trees whispered in the wind. A bird called somewhere nearby. Life went on around me, indifferent. I stayed there until the sun dipped lower and the light shifted. When I left, I chose a different route, one that wound through smaller roads and towns. I drove until I was tired enough to sleep despite my nerves. That night, I parked behind a closed store and slept lightly, waking at every sound. I never saw the sedan again. I never learned who those men were or what they wanted. The uncertainty stayed with me longer than the fear itself. It became another lesson layered into my time on the road. Trust the feeling when it comes. Do not wait for proof. Movement can save you. Hesitation can trap you. Years later, I still think about that rest area sometimes, about how close ordinary things sit to danger. A cup of bad coffee, a broken down car, a glance held a second too long. Nothing happened in the end. I got away. But the knowledge of how easily something could have happened has never fully left me. I was driving from San Antonio to El Paso for a job interview I did not want, the kind you take to keep peace at home. My dad kept telling me I needed to get out of town, like the place itself was holding me back. I left after sunset to avoid the heat and the traffic. The air was still warm but no longer punishing. The highway lights thinned out quickly once the city fell behind me. I remember feeling calm at first, the kind of calm that comes when you commit to a long drive and nothing is expected of you except staying awake. The road west was familiar for the first few hours. Long straight stretches, occasional trucks, gas stations spaced far apart but not far enough to worry me. My GPS showed a clean route, a single blue line stretching across Texas like a promise. I kept the radio low, scanning between stations. Music faded into static more often than not. I did not mind. Silence felt better. Somewhere east of Fort Stockton, the GPS screen blinked and rerouted. A gray box appeared with a polite message about construction ahead. The new route shaved off 15 minutes, supposedly. I did not question it. I was tired of driving straight. A turn felt like progress. The exit ramp dropped me onto a narrower road. The pavement was darker, rougher, patched in uneven slabs. The shoulder vanished almost immediately. No reflectors marked the edges. The lines down the middle looked old and thin, like they had been painted once and forgotten. The land around me was flat but crowded with scrub and low fencing. Oil fences ran parallel to the road, metal posts and wire disappearing into the dark. The plants looked burned even at night, brittle shapes against the sky. I checked the GPS again. The blue line stayed steady. The estimated arrival time updated. 15 minutes saved. I drove on. The radio cut out at a mile marker that caught my eye because it was bent and leaning. The static went dead, then came back weak. I adjusted the dial. A song returned for a moment, then faded again. I passed another mile marker, identical in shape and damage. The radio cut out again at the exact spot. Same length of silence. Same weak return of sound. I told myself it was coincidence. Out here everything repeated. The road stretched on without signs. No cross streets, no houses. No lights except my headlights, and the faint glow of the dashboard. My speed held steady until I noticed it was not. The needle dipped lower without my foot moving. I pressed the gas lightly and it responded, but the resistance felt wrong, like pushing against thick air. That was when I smelled something through the vents. Not strong at first, just a hint, metallic, damp, like wet copper. It reminded me of old pennies held too long in a closed hand. I checked the vents, thinking something had crawled up inside or a filter had gone bad. The smell lingered, then faded. I saw the first pickup truck parked far off the road on the right. It sat beyond the fence, nose pointed toward the road, engine off, no lights. It was far enough away that I might have missed it, if not for the pale reflection of my headlights on the windshield. I slowed slightly as I passed, without meaning to. My foot stayed where it was, but the car eased down. I corrected it again. A few minutes later, there was another truck. This one was closer. Same position, engine off, no lights, dark windows. It looked older, the kind of work truck that never leaves the county. I felt the same drag on my speed. This time it dipped lower before I noticed. The smell returned, stronger now. Wet copper and dust. I scanned the horizon. The land was too open for the number of vehicles I was seeing. There was no visible road leading to them. No tracks I could make out. Just fence and scrub and parked trucks placed like markers. The GPS still showed the route as valid. No warning. No recalculation. I tried to zoom out. The screen lagged, then refreshed. The blue line curved slightly, then straightened again. I checked the distance to the next turn. It did not change. Another mile marker passed. Same number as before. My mouth felt dry. I took a sip of water and tasted metal. I rolled the window down an inch. The night air rushed in, warm and heavy. The smell grew worse, then mixed with something else. Oil. Old oil. The kind that soaks into dirt and never leaves. There were more trucks now. Some on the right. Some on the left. All parked beyond the fence. None with lights. None with open doors. None with signs of people. They were not evenly spaced. Some were close together. Others stood alone. Each time I passed one, my speed dropped again. It became harder to bring it back up. The engine sounded strained, like it was working uphill on flat ground. I told myself to turn around. The thought came clear and calm. Just turn around. But there was nowhere to turn. No shoulder. No breaks in the fence. The road felt narrower, though I knew it was not. My headlights seemed shorter, swallowed by the dark. The GPS screen flickered. The arrival time increased by 20 minutes. Then 30. The route line stayed blue. I realized I had been driving longer than made sense. Fort Stockton should have been behind me by now. El Paso was still far, but not this far. I saw a set of tire marks crossing the road at an angle, darker than the rest of the pavement. They led from the fence on one side to the fence on the other. I slowed without thinking. The car eased down to a crawl. I pressed the gas harder. The engine responded late. The smell filled the cabin, wet copper, oil, something rotten underneath. My chest tightened. I felt lightheaded. I told myself to breathe through my mouth. The taste followed. Up ahead, the road dipped slightly. In that dip, my headlights caught something on the pavement, a dark shape. Not large. I could not tell what it was at first. I slowed more, my foot barely touching the brake. The car came almost to a stop. I realized then that I had already stopped once before. The memory surfaced like a bruise touched too late. I remembered sitting still, hands on the wheel, engine idling, headlights fixed on empty road. I remembered thinking I had only paused to adjust the GPS. I remembered the smell being stronger then than it was now. The shape on the road resolved into a smear. Something dragged. Not fresh. Dark and dull. The copper smell made sense. I understood why the trucks were parked where they were. They were not abandoned. They were waiting not for me, for what the road provided. I put the car in reverse. The engine stalled. The dashboard lights flickered. I tried again. Nothing. The smell was overwhelming now. I felt my heart racing uneven, like it was skipping steps. I forced myself to stay still. Panic would waste air. I turned the key again. The engine caught. Weak. I shifted into drive and pressed the gas hard. The car lurched forward. The speed climbed slowly, then faster. The resistance lessened as I passed the smear. The smell faded inch by inch. The trucks began to thin out. The fences pulled farther from the road. Reflectors appeared, dull but visible. A sign stood ahead, bent but readable. Highway marker. I merged onto a wider road without signaling, hands shaking. I did not stop until I reached a gas station near the edge of town. Bright lights, people, noise. I parked under a floodlight and sat there breathing. The smell was gone. My clothes smelled normal. The car smelled normal. I checked the GPS history. The detour route was gone, not marked as traveled. The mileage was off by nearly 50 miles. I checked the time. I had lost over an hour. Later, I looked up road closures near Fort Stockton. There had been construction, but no detour like the one I took. There had been reports of illegal dumping along rural roads. Animal remains. Industrial waste. Accidents covered up by people who did not want attention. Trucks parked off the road made sense. People watching their investment rot. I did not go to the interview. I drove back east in daylight, on the main highway, with the air conditioning blasting. I told my dad the job fell through. He did not press me. I still smell wet copper sometimes when I drive at night. I keep the windows down now. I do not take shortcuts. If a road looks too empty, I stay away. I know how easy it is to stop without meaning to. I know how hard it is to start again once you do. I was 22 and driving alone to scatter my brother's ashes. I had promised myself I would keep the trip clean and quiet. No music. No phone calls. No stops unless I needed fuel. I did not want distractions because the drive itself felt like something I owed him. He loved roads that went on forever. He liked places where towns were far apart and the map looked empty. I will not say where I was headed, because the place does not deserve to be named. It was a rural state highway that cut through miles of nothing. The kind with mile markers instead of exits. The road ran straight for long stretches, then bent slowly around low hills and dry fields. No trees close to the shoulder, no guardrails. Just gravel, scrub, and the flat dark. I left late in the afternoon. I wanted to reach the place by night and be done before morning. The urn sat on the passenger seat with the seatbelt across it. It was heavier than I expected. The weight felt wrong for what it held. My brother had been a solid presence in my life, even when he was quiet, and the urn felt like a bad joke. I kept my eyes forward and my hands steady. The car was old but reliable. I had driven it for years. The engine sound was familiar. The smell of the interior was familiar. Everything inside the car felt safe and known. The sun dropped fast. Out there, evening does not linger. The sky went from pale to deep blue, then to black. The highway lights were rare. Most of the time, my headlights were the only light moving across the land. I passed a few trucks early on, then none. The radio stayed off. The hum of the tires and the wind filled the car. I felt tired but alert. Grief does not always feel heavy. Sometimes it feels sharp and focused. That was how it felt then. The mile markers came and went. White signs with black numbers. I watched them without thinking, the way you watch fence posts or clouds. I remember mile 317 because I thought about stopping soon, maybe pulling over and taking a breath. I did not. I kept driving. At mile 318, my headlights caught something tall standing just beyond the shoulder. It was not a person. I know how big people are at distance. This thing was taller than that, and thinner. It stood too close to the road for comfort, just past the white line where the gravel began. It did not move at first. The shape did not make sense right away. My brain searched for familiar forms and came up empty. I eased off the gas. As the car closed the distance, the thing shifted back. It did not step, it bent. The motion looked wrong, like it folded instead of walked. The top portion moved first, then the lower part followed, as if joints were in the wrong places or hidden. The headlights washed over it, and then it was gone, swallowed by the dark beyond the shoulder. I felt a tightness in my chest. Not panic. Something closer to confusion. The road ahead was clear. No sound followed, no sign of movement. I told myself it was equipment. A sign frame. A piece of farm machinery left too close to the road. In poor light, anything can look strange. I kept driving. The next mile marker came into view. 318. I frowned. I was sure I had just passed it. I checked the speedometer. The needle sat where it should. I checked the fuel gauge. Plenty left. I glanced at the clock. A few minutes had passed. I told myself I had missed 319 in the dark. That happens. Mile markers are easy to miss when you are focused ahead. I watched more closely after that. The road stayed the same, straight, flat, empty. The headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the night. The feeling of isolation deepened. I started to feel watched, not in a dramatic way, but like the land itself was paying attention. That feeling comes from fatigue and stress. I knew that. I adjusted my posture and rolled my shoulders. I took a deep breath. Another mile marker appeared. 318. My grip tightened on the wheel. I looked behind me in the mirror. Nothing but darkness. I looked ahead. The road vanished into black. I checked the odometer. The numbers were there, but something felt off. I did not stare long enough to notice what exactly. My mind was already trying to make sense of the markers. I considered turning around. Pride stopped me. I did not want to add more time to the drive. I did not want to admit that I was rattled. I kept going. The third time I saw mile 318, my heart rate jumped. I slowed almost to a crawl as I passed it. I scanned the shoulder. I scanned the fields beyond. I saw nothing tall, nothing moving. The land lay still. The road remained empty. I told myself the markers were wrong. Maybe there was construction. Maybe someone had replaced a sign in the wrong spot. That explanation felt thin, but I clung to it. Time stretched. The drive began to feel longer than it should. My sense of distance slipped. I checked the clock again. More time had passed than made sense. I felt a wave of exhaustion, the kind that comes suddenly, heavy and urgent. I rolled down the window to let cold air hit my face. It helped for a moment. Mile 318 appeared again. This time I felt anger. A sharp, clean anger that cut through the fog. I spoke aloud to myself without forming words, just breath and sound. I focused on the road and forced the car forward. I told myself I would reach the next marker and it would be different. It had to be. It was not. I do not know how many times I passed that sign. The memory blurs. What I remember clearly is the sense of motion without progress. The road never changed, the land never changed. The sky never changed. The stars stayed fixed. The moon did not move. My body grew tired in a deep way, the kind that makes your limbs feel distant. My eyes burned. I blinked hard to keep them open. At some point, I realized the odometer was not ticking. The numbers had stopped. I do not know when that happened. It could have been early. It could have been after the first pass. I had not noticed because I was not watching it closely. When I did notice, it felt like a confirmation of something I had been trying to ignore. The car was moving. The engine was running. The speedometer worked. But the odometer sat frozen. I thought about pulling over. The idea felt dangerous. The shoulder looked soft and uneven. The land beyond was dark and wide. I did not want to step out there alone. I did not want to stop the motion, even if the motion was pointless. I kept driving. My thoughts drifted to my brother. Memories surfaced without warning. Small things. The way he used to drum his fingers on the table. The way he squinted in bright light. The night he taught me how to change a tire on the side of the road. Calm and methodical, even as trucks blasted past. I felt the ache of him in the car with me, not as a presence, but as an absence that took up space. The urn seemed heavier. I did not look at it. The tall thing returned. It stood farther back this time, just within the reach of the headlights. I did not see it at first. I sensed it, a vertical interruption in the flat line of the land. As I drew closer, the shape resolved. It was thin, too thin. The top angled forward, then back, like a bent pole. As the car approached, it folded again, collapsing in on itself in a way that suggested hinges where none should be. The motion was quick and silent. It disappeared before I reached it. I did not feel fear in the way people describe fear. I felt a cold focus. My mind locked onto the physical details. The height, the angle, the way the motion followed a pattern. I told myself it was a piece of irrigation equipment. A tall sprinkler arm. A signpost knocked loose. In the dark, with fatigue, depth perception fails. The folding could be an illusion caused by the car's movement and the sweep of the headlights. That explanation did not explain why it appeared only at mile 318. I drove on. The repetition wore me down. My thoughts looped the way the road did. At some point, I stopped checking the markers. I stopped caring what number they showed. I focused on staying awake. My head nodded once, then snapped up. I slapped my cheek with my free hand. The cold air from the open window cut across my face. The land began to feel closer, like the dark pressed in on the car. The headlights seemed weaker. I leaned forward, as if that would help them reach farther. I told myself to make it to dawn. Dawn would fix this. Daylight would reveal the truth of the road. I do not remember pulling over. That fact bothers me more than anything else. I do not remember slowing to a stop. I do not remember opening the door. I do not remember stepping out. What I remember next is standing beside the car with the urn in my hands. The night air was cold and still. The road stretched away in both directions, empty. I stood near the shoulder, a few feet from the white line. The ground was uneven, scattered with gravel and dry weeds. My hands shook. I felt detached, like I was watching myself from a distance. I remember the weight of the urn. I remember the sound of the lid turning. I remember the feel of fine grit against my fingers. I do not remember the act itself. I know what must have happened because the urn was empty later. I must have scattered the ashes. I must have stepped away from the road and released them into the dark. The idea feels wrong because it does not match the place I had planned. It does not match the promise I made to do it right. But the facts are simple. The urn was empty when I returned home. After that, my memory fractures. There are flashes. The car door closing. The engine starting. The road moving under the headlights again. The sense of time slipping. I do not remember seeing the tall thing again. I do not remember the mile markers after that. I arrived home before dawn. The sky was lightening at the edges. The familiar streets felt unreal, like a set built to look like my town. I parked in front of my place and sat in the car for a long time. The engine ticked as it cooled. My hands rested on the wheel. When I finally moved, it felt like wading through water. Inside, I set the urn on the table. The emptiness shocked me. I lifted it and tilted it as if something might be stuck. Nothing fell. The inside was clean. I stood there and tried to recall the moment of release. I could not. Later, after sleep and a shower and hours of staring at nothing, I started to piece together what had happened. I approached it the way my brother would have. Step by step. No drama, just facts. The car inspection came first. In daylight, the old car looked normal. Then I checked the odometer. It worked again. The numbers turned when I drove around the block. That suggested a mechanical fault. Intermittent failures happen in old vehicles, especially in the instrument cluster. A loose connection could freeze the display without affecting the speedometer. I drove back out to the highway a week later, during the day, with someone else following me. I did not tell them why. I just said I needed to check something. We found the stretch with the mile markers. There was construction nearby, farther down the road than I had realized. Several signs had been moved and reinstalled temporarily. Mile 318 appeared twice within a short distance. One sign was placed incorrectly, marking the same number again. At night, with fatigue, it would be easy to miss the transition and think you were looping. As for the tall thing, daylight revealed tall irrigation rigs parked near the fields. Some had long arms that folded at sharp angles. From the road, in low light, they could look like standing figures. When a vehicle approaches, the change in perspective can make them seem to move or bend. The mind fills in gaps when it is tired and under stress. The pullover makes sense too, when I am honest. I had been awake too long. I had been emotionally raw. I likely experienced microsleep, brief lapses where the brain shuts down while the body continues on autopilot. During one of those lapses, I could have pulled over without forming a memory of it. The act of scattering the ashes would have been simple and automatic, driven by the task I had held in my mind for hours. None of these explanations comfort me. They explain how, not what it felt like. They do not erase the sense of being stuck in that place, moving without progress. They do not erase the image of the tall shape folding back into the dark. I accept what happened because there is nothing else to do. My brother's ashes are where they ended up. Not where I planned, but somewhere along a road he would have liked, under a sky that was wide and empty. The highway has not trapped me since. I have driven it again without incident. Mile 318 is just a number now, printed on a sign. Still, when I drive alone at night and the road stretches on without landmarks, I watch the shoulders closely. I pay attention to fatigue. I stop when I need to stop. I do not trust the sense of motion to mean progress. And I know with a clarity that came at a cost, how easy it is for a human mind to fold in on itself, bend in the wrong places, and disappear for a while without leaving a clear trace. We left Portland late because none of us wanted to waste a workday. 4 of us packed into my car with backpacks, a cooler, and a loose plan. Boys was cheap, familiar enough to feel easy, far enough to feel like escape. Gas was low, food was whatever we could grab. Music stayed loud to keep us awake. The mood was light in the way it only is at the start of a trip, when nothing has gone wrong yet and the road still feels open. Eastern Oregon flattened out after the Cascades. Pine gave way to scrub. The sky widened. Cell service thinned. We missed the turn outside Pendleton because the highway split without warning and the sign was half hidden by a truck. The navigation app corrected itself, then hesitated, then routed us onto an older state road that ran parallel to the freeway. It looked fine on screen. A thin line. No warnings. We stayed on it because the detour only added a few minutes and we liked the quiet. The road felt older than the highway. Narrower shoulders. Reflectors spaced farther apart. The pavement had been patched so many times it looked stitched. We passed shuttered gas stations and long fences with no houses behind them. Every few miles there was a pullout with a historical marker, the kind nobody stops to read at night. We drove with the windows cracked. The air smelled like dust and dry grass. The music dropped lower as the road got darker. Around 1 in the morning we started talking about sleep. Boys was still hours away and nobody wanted to push it tired. We scanned for towns. The app showed nothing close. Then headlights caught a vacancy sign on the right, half lit, the red letters flickering like a bad connection. The motel sat back from the road behind a low gravel lot. 1 story, 12 doors. No cars except one older sedan near the office. It did not appear on any map. We checked twice. The screen showed empty land where the building stood. That should have mattered more to us. It did not. We were tired and the sign was on. The office door was open. Fluorescent light hummed. The owner sat behind a counter that looked older than the building. He wore a short-sleeved shirt buttoned wrong at the collar. His skin looked waxy under the light. He did not blink while he filled out the card. His eyes stayed fixed on us in a way that felt measured, not curious. The air inside smelled like cleaning fluid layered over something damp. I handed over my license, because the others had already started drifting back toward the car. He studied it longer than needed. He wrote slowly. His pen pressed hard enough to dent the paper. When he slid the key across the counter, his fingers paused on the edge, as if waiting for something else to happen. I took it and turned away. He did not say anything at all. The room was clean in the way cheap motels aim for. Bleach smell, thin carpet, bedspread stiff with detergent. The bathroom fan rattled. The window faced the lot. A curtain blocked most of the view, but I could see the security cameras mounted along the eaves. They looked right at first. Black dumbs, even spacing. When I leaned closer, I saw they were plastic shells screwed into the siding with no wires leading anywhere. They were props. That detail stuck. Fake cameras meant something was being implied. Either safety or control. I sat on the edge of the bed and tried to make sense of why anyone would bother. The lot was quiet. The office light stayed on. The sedan did not move. We fell asleep unevenly. The kind of sleep that never settles. My phone said 3:12 a.m. when I woke to the sound at the door. It was not a knock meant to wake a room. It was light, careful, placed low on the panel. The sound threaded into my sleep and pulled me out without shock. Then there was a whisper through the crack around the door. It said my name. Not loud. Not urgent. Not a guess. It was spoken with confidence, as if the person expected me to answer. No other words followed. Just my name, breathed once, close to the door. My body locked. My thoughts narrowed. I did not move. The room held still except for the hum of the light outside. I watched the door handle. It did not turn. The whisper did not repeat. After a few seconds, there were footsteps moving away across gravel, slow and unhurried. I did not wake the others. I sat there until my breathing matched the room again. I checked the lock twice. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. When I finally lay back down, I kept my phone in my hand, screen dark, finger resting where the light would come on. Morning came thin and gray. We packed without speaking much. The lot looked smaller in daylight. The building looked newer than it should have, like something assembled quickly. The office door was closed. The sedan was gone. When we pulled out, I glanced at the eaves again. The plastic domes caught the light and reflected nothing. We drove until the sun was fully up. Coffee came later at a chain station off the highway. The normal world returned in pieces. Traffic, billboards, familiar logos. Nobody slept. Nobody asked questions. The thing sat between us, unspoken, heavy. On the way back 2 days later, we took the same route by mistake. The same missed turn. The same older road. It was mid-morning, clear sky, good visibility. We watched the shoulder carefully as we approached where the motel should have been. The vacancy sign was gone. The gravel lot was gone. There was only a wide stretch of dirt and weeds, flattened as if something had been there and removed. No foundation, no utility hookups, no signpost shadow. The app still showed nothing. That was when we talked, quietly, without details that could grow. We pieced it together in practical terms. The owner had my name because he had my license. He could have walked the lot and checked the room numbers. The whisper did not need to be anything else. The fake cameras were meant to keep guests compliant, not safe. The motel could have been operating without permits, set up temporarily on leased land, catering to travelers who would not come back. The lack of records would make it invisible by design. We reported it when we got home. County offices passed us between departments. Nobody had a listing. Nobody had a record. The road maintenance crew said no structure had been removed recently. The land was privately owned by a shell company registered out of state. The report stalled. What stays with me is not the whisper itself. It is the certainty in it. The ease. The confidence that I would hear and understand. Whoever stood outside that door knew exactly how thin the line was between rest and panic. They knew how tired we were. They knew the road would carry us away before daylight made questions stick. I still check maps before stopping. I still look at cameras. I still wake sometimes at 3:12 a.m., phone in hand, listening for footsteps that are not there. I was 19 when it happened, old enough to drive alone but still careless about risk. This was before phones could tell you where you were every second. If you missed a turn, you pulled over and guessed. My uncle liked to remind me of that. He had driven trucks and service vans for most of his life and trusted paper more than screens. When I told him I was taking a short road trip to pick up a used camera from a seller in another county, he pulled a folded sheet from a drawer and slid it across the table. It was a hand-drawn map in blue ink with pencil notes in the margins. He told me not to trust highway signs after dark. I laughed and said signs were the whole point of roads. He did not laugh. He tapped the paper once and told me to keep it on the seat where I could see it. The route was supposed to take 3 hours. I had driven parts of it before on main roads. The map showed a different approach, a web of smaller lines that cut across the printed highways like shortcuts drawn by someone who knew the land. The paper smelled faintly of oil and dust. The ink lines were steady and confident. The pencil marks looked added later. Some turns were circled. Some had words like slow and dip and cattle written next to them. I put the map on the passenger seat and left just after sunset, thinking I would be back home before midnight. The first hour went as expected. The paved road was wide and empty, the kind of drive where the radio stays low and the world feels distant. When I reached the first turn marked on the map, the highway sign pointed straight toward my destination, with a mileage number that matched what I expected. The map told me to turn right onto a narrower road, with no sign at all. I remembered my uncle's warning and took the turn. The pavement changed texture right away, rougher and darker. The trees closed in. My headlights lit up trunks and brush instead of open fields. The map worked. After a few miles, the narrow road met another that brought me back toward the main route at a different angle. The mileage on my odometer dropped faster than it should have. I felt clever. I trusted the paper more with each turn. The roads dipped into tree cover and came out in places that did not match what I thought the land looked like. Hills appeared where I expected flat ground. A creek crossed the road at a shallow ford where the map showed a bridge. There was no bridge. The water was low and clear, and the tires rolled through without trouble. I told myself the map was old. As night settled in, the sense of distance changed. I drove through pockets of darkness where the air felt colder. The road markings faded. Reflectors appeared and disappeared without pattern. I passed abandoned driveways with mailboxes leaning at angles. Some still had names on them, bleached and peeling. The map guided me through turns that had no signs at all. Each time the pencil notes matched what I saw. A long curve, a blind rise, a stretch where the road narrowed to one lane with grass in the center. The accuracy kept me from questioning the odd feeling building in my chest. By the second hour, I realized I had not seen another car for a long time. The radio lost its signal and filled with static. I turned it off. The engine noise sounded louder in the quiet. The trees pressed close enough that branches brushed the sides of the car. I checked the map again and saw a gas station marked with a square and a circle around it. I had used more fuel than planned because of the slow sections. I decided to stop. The station sat at a bend in the road where the trees pulled back. The lights were on but dim, casting a yellow pool over cracked concrete. The building looked older than the pumps. The map showed it as a reliable stop. I pulled in and shut off the engine. The air smelled of fuel and damp leaves. Inside, the attendant watched me from behind the counter. I placed the map on the counter while I paid. His eyes stayed on the paper longer than on me. He leaned closer and studied the lines. He made a sign across his chest with his hand. When I left, I heard the lock turn behind me. The door closed with a final sound that echoed in the empty lot. I stood there for a moment with the map folded in my hand. The night felt heavier than before. I told myself the man was strange and moved on. The map showed the next section clearly, a series of roads that threaded through a low area before climbing back to the highway near my destination. I followed it. The low area held fog. It pooled along the road and crept into the car through the vents. My headlights reflected back at me, turning the world into a tunnel of white. The map indicated a turn that should have been obvious, but I nearly missed it because the sign was turned away from the road. Someone had rotated it so the face pointed into the trees. I took the turn and felt the road slope downward. Water ran across the pavement in thin sheets. The car slid slightly before gripping again. Time stretched. The clock on the dashboard moved, but my sense of progress did not match it. I drove for what felt like hours through the fog, following the map through curves and dips. When the fog lifted, I found myself at a crossroads with a stop sign that leaned so far it almost touched the ground. The map told me to go straight. The sign pointed to places I recognized by name, but the distances were wrong. I trusted the paper and went straight. The road climbed. The trees thinned. I reached a ridge where the land dropped away on both sides. The map showed a long straight run before a sharp turn. I saw the turn ahead, marked by a guardrail that ended abruptly. Beyond it, the road continued as dirt, disappearing into darkness. The map told me to stay on the paved section and turn. I did. As I rounded the bend, my headlights caught something reflective on the shoulder. It was a cluster of small roadside memorials, flowers tied to posts, bits of metal and glass. I slowed without meaning to. The map had a note there that said, "Do not stop." I did not stop. I kept driving. The road narrowed further. My speed dropped. The engine worked harder. I felt watched, not by anything specific, but by the weight of the place. Every sense was tuned to the road and the map. When I finally reached a familiar highway, it felt like surfacing from deep water. The sign told me I was near my destination, but the direction was flipped. I was coming in from the opposite side of where I expected. The clock told me it was after 2 in the morning. The 3-hour trip had taken 9. I completed the errand at first light and drove home on main roads. I did not use the map again that day. I folded it and put it in the glove compartment. Over time, the memory faded into a strange story I told myself when roads felt empty. My uncle died the following winter. It was sudden. A hard issue. I helped clean out his place. The drawer where the map had been was empty. I assumed he had given me the only copy. Years passed. I moved, changed cars, forgot details. One afternoon, while cleaning out the glove compartment to sell the car, I found the map again. It was folded the same way, creased along the same lines. The oil and dust smell was still there. I stood in the driveway holding it, certain I had not put it there. My uncle had been dead for 6 months by then. I had not driven that car in weeks. I sat in the driver's seat and studied the paper in daylight. The ink lines were older than I remembered. The pencil notes showed pressure marks on the back of the sheet, as if someone had pressed hard while adding them. In the corner, a faint stamp showed through, the kind used by county survey offices decades ago. I realized the paper was not a single sheet. It was a carbon copy. The ink had transferred from another page beneath it. My uncle had drawn the map on top of a stack, making multiple copies without separating them. One had been in the drawer. Another had been in my car since the day he handed it to me, slipped under the liner of the glove compartment where I had placed it without noticing. The realization brought relief and a deeper unease. The map had not returned on its own. It had never left. I looked closer at the routes. The shortcuts followed old service roads and maintenance paths that no longer appeared on modern charts. The gas station sat near a border between counties where records overlapped and oversight was thin. The locked door made sense in a different light. Those roads were used by people who did not want to be seen, moving goods and money through places where signs were turned away and reflectors went missing. The memorials marked accidents that never made the news. I unfolded the map fully and traced the path I had taken. In pencil near the final turn, a note read daylight only. I had ignored it. The 9-hour drive was not a mystery of time, but of speed and caution. The fog, the narrow lanes, the stops I did not remember adding up. The fear had sharpened every minute. I folded the map and put it back where it belonged, then removed it from the car for good. I understood my uncle's warning at last. He had known the land as it was, not as signs claimed it to be. After dark, those differences mattered. I no longer laughed at that.